KaraFrance and Amir Albazi are set to lock horns in a big flyweight division main event at UFC Vegas 74. We got this fight and the entire main card predictions next.
You're watching the Community MMA.
In the women's flyweight division at UFC Vegas 74, you got Corrine, Silva, the Brazilian, coming in at 15-4, taking on fellow Brazilian Kellen, Souza, who comes in at 13-3, making the UFC debut. Now Silva, 2 inches taller at 5'5". They're both in their 20s. Silva has a 3-inch reach advantage, 67-64. Silva fights right-handed. She lands about 2.5 significant strikes per minute. Takedown average, like 1.3 takedowns over the course of 3 rounds. So she may get 1 takedown during this fight, potentially 2 if she wants to supersede the average. Now, takedown defense is non-existent because she hasn't had any takedown defense. She gave up 2 takedowns against Jan Kohil, Dana White's Contender Series, but she did win by submission. Came into the UFC and beat Poliana Botelho. Nice victory by Diar's choke submission. She was outstruck at that point 19-17 in significant strikes. Now, Kellen Souza, again, making a debut, has won 5 straight fights, right? In the 13 wins, 8 KOs, 1 submission, 4 decisions. She did lose 2 times by KO, 1 time by submission, but 5 straight wins, 2 of those by TKO. The last 3 by decision. She's fought out of Invicta FC in the last 2 fights. And to me, this is a very tough prediction just because of the unknown, right? This is almost like a Dana White Contender Series fight where you don't have a lot of action in the UFC, but because Corrine Silva did beat Poliana Botelho and looked better in that fight than she did at the Contender Series, it tells me that she's getting better over time. And she hasn't been in the octagon for almost a year, so she's probably even better than the last time we saw her. So I'm going to lean toward Corrine Silva to edge out the victory here, mainly on significant strikes and takedown defense. If she can keep the fight standing, that will help, but she's got to be careful with Souza, who has 8 KOs. So there is an opportunity here for Souza to get the victory, but just on what I've seen in the UFC, Corrine Silva 1-0. I have no reason to believe she'll fall to 1-1. I like Corrine Silva to get the win in this Brazil-on-Brazil matchup to move to 16-4 women's flyweight division, UFC Vegas 74. In the flyweight division at UFC Vegas 74, you got Tim Elliott coming in at 19-12. Not the best record in the world, taking on Victor Marano, who comes in at 12-2. But nonetheless, Tim Elliott is still the favorite in this fight. Let's see why. Victor, 1 inch taller, 5'8". He's got a 4-inch reach advantage. He's a switch stance fighter. Tim Elliott fights left-handed. Now, Victor is way more active, 6.2 significant strikes per minute so far in the UFC. Tim Elliott, 3.6 significant strikes per minute. So Victor's got an advantage on the feet, but the takedown game leans slightly towards Tim Elliott, who lands more than a takedown per round slightly. Victor, 2.5 takedowns over the course of 3 rounds. So both guys are on pace almost to land a takedown per round. So takedown defense will become important. Tim Elliott, 61%. Victor, 74%. Now, Tim Elliott's won 3 of the last 4 against Tagir Ulanbekov, Jordan Espinoza, and Ryan Benoit. He did lose to Matthias Nicolau, a very good fighter, by decision, but it was a very close fight. Now, Victor Marano's won 2 in a row against Vinicius Salvador, decision. Daniel Lacerda, KO. He did lose to Carlos Hernandez by split decision and beat Carlos Candelario by split decision at Dana White's Contender Series. So the deal is Victor Marano finds ways to win, but Tim Elliott is a veteran. I can see why he's the favorite in this fight. I'm leaning towards Tim Elliott just by a little bit. You know, you look at the significant strikes per minute, favors Victor. Takedown slightly favors Elliott, and Victor also has a better takedown defense. So you would think that Victor would be the favorite. And I don't really find an angle here for Tim Elliott to win other than the fact that he's a veteran. He's been in a lot of close fights. He finds ways to win. He's also won 3 of the last 4, including a fight against Matthias Nicolau that people thought he won. It could very easily be 4 in a row. So I like the momentum to continue here for Tim Elliott. Sometimes these records don't matter. As guys get deeper into their career, he's just 36 years old, right? He's still got a few years before he creeps into that 40 range. And he's at the height of his career right now, and he's starting to peak. So I like Tim Elliott to get a close decision victory here, in my opinion, to move to 20-12. You know, he'll keep the significant strikes close. He'll probably land some takedowns, but all in all, they'll split the first two, and Tim Elliott will squeak out a win here in the third round to get the victory here in the flyweight division at UFC Vegas 74. In the lightweight division at UFC Vegas 74, you got Jim Miller coming in at 35-17, 52 professional fights, taking on Jared Flash Gordon, who comes in at 19-6. Now, Gordon's 1 inch taller at 5'9". He's 34. Jim Miller's getting up there, 39 years old. He's got a 3-inch reach advantage over Gordon. He fights southpaw. Gordon fights right-handed. Now, Jared Gordon is very active, 5.3 significant strikes per minute to 2.9 for Jim Miller. He also lands more takedowns, 2 over the course of 3 rounds. Jim Miller, about a takedown and a half over the course of 3 rounds, which really equates to about 1 takedown every other round. Now, Jim Miller, weak takedown defense, 48%. That's something that plagued him throughout his career. He's coming off the loss to Alexander Hernandez by decision, but before then he won 3 in a row against Donald Cowboy Cerrone, Nicholas Mata, and Eric Gonzalez. Now, Flash Gordon, 62% takedown defense. Not very good either, so you expect some takedowns in this fight. He had a no contest against Bobby Green. Before that, he lost to Paddy Pimblett, but he took it to a decision and looked good in that fight, landing 3 takedowns, somehow getting the loss, even though it was just 63-60 in significant strikes. Before that, he beat Leonardo Santos by decision, dominating him 116-36 in significant strikes, and he lost to Grant Dawson, giving up 7 takedowns. So the odds favor Jared Gordon here to get the victory, but Jim Miller is always a tough out. He's ever the veteran. He is the underdog in this fight, but I'm going with the underdog here. I like Jim Miller because the guy is relentless. He's got 2 times as many wins as losses. 17 losses is a lot, but he's never an easy out. And you see he's won 3 of the last 4 fights. Well, I like him to win 4 of his last 5. He's not quite 40 yet. He's 39. So he's still got a little energy in the tank. I like Jim Miller to squeak out a decision here. He's got to defend the takedowns. That could be a problem. But Jim Miller will find a way to win to move to 36-17, in my opinion. Lightweight division, UFC Vegas 74. In the featherweight division at UFC Vegas 74, you got Alex Caceres coming in at 20-13. A lot of losses. Daniel Pineda comes in at 28-14. So 2 guys with a lot of losses. But the momentum favors Caceres. Will explain why. He's 3 inches taller at 5'10". Both guys in their mid-30s. Well, actually, Pineda is 37 years old, so he's getting up there. Caceres with a 5-inch reach advantage. He fights left-handed. Pineda fights right-handed. Now, Caceres lands about 4.2 significant strikes per minute to 3.3 for Pineda, but Pineda lands like a takedown every other round, so that's to his advantage. Caceres just a 64% takedown defense. And at one point, he had like a 14-13, maybe 15-13, 14-12 record, somewhere around there. And then he went on a 5-fight win streak. He ended up losing to Sadiq Youssef by decision in a very close fight. In a fight, he actually outstruck Sadiq Youssef 66-64. So it broke the 5-fight win streak, came back and beat Julian Juicy J. Arosa by KO. So he's won 6 of his last 7 fights. Now, Pineda, 48% takedown defense. He has a win over Tucker Lutz in his last fight, but lost to Cub Swanson prior to that. Beat Herbert Burns, that's a big win, but lost to Robert Whiteford and Diego Brandeo. So this one's pretty simple to me. I told you a while back Caceres will go on a run. He ended up doing so. Yeah, he had a tough fight against Sadiq Youssef. Fought well, though, and showed he's a legitimate fighter now. The 20-13 record is not even close to being the same as Pineda's 28-14. I like Alex Caceres to win this fight easy. The biggest question to me here is, will he get the finish or not? I'd like to see him do so, but one way or another, in my opinion, he wins to move to 21-13 and make it 7 wins in his last 8 fights here in the featherweight division at UFC Vegas 74. In the flyweight division at UFC Vegas 74. This is your main event. KaraFrance comes in at 24-10, taking on Amir Albazi, who comes in at a nice 16-1. And this fight is even money for entertainment purposes only. Albazi 1 inch taller at 5'5". Both guys pretty much in the prime of their career. Albazi 29, KaraFrance, he's 30. KaraFrance has a 1 inch reach advantage. Both guys stand right-handed. Now, KaraFrance is more active, 4.7 significant strikes per minute to 3.5 for Albazi, but Albazi has an advantage in the takedown game, landing like 2.5 takedowns over the course of 3 rounds, which equates to almost a takedown every single round. But here's the trick. KaraFrance has an 87% takedown defense, so he's going to limit a lot of those takedowns. Against Brandon Marano, he lost by TKO, but it was 58-53 in significant strikes from Marano, very close. KaraFrance even had a takedown in that fight. Before that, he beat Askarov by decision. Big win there. He gave up 2 takedowns, but dominated in significant strikes. He also beat Cody Garbrandt and Rogerio Bontorin. Albazi, 66% takedown defense. He has wins over Alessandro Costa, Francisco Figueiredo, submission. Both of those by finish. Zhalgas Zhumagulov and Malcolm Gordon. So he's 4-0 in the UFC. And this is a tough prediction because Albazi has such a great record, the ability to land takedowns, and KaraFrance has 10 losses. Again, he's 24-10. So a lot of losses for KaraFrance, but he's gotten better throughout his career. He's got a lot of fights, 34 professional fights for a 30-year-old. That's incredible. So how's this fight going to go? It's going to be a pretty close fight. I think this fight goes to a decision, even though it's a 5-rounder. I mean, you could get a finish here, but you got 2 really good fighters that are likely to go to a decision. And Albazi has good enough ability to strike. He's not as good or as active as KaraFrance, but he's going to land 2 to 3 takedowns if this fight goes to a decision. He's going to keep the significant strikes close enough, and I think it's going to be a very close decision. Could go either way, really. That's why it's 50-50. It's the perfect odds, if you ask me, because it's a very tough prediction. But I like Amir Albazi to squeak out a victory here. This guy has been impressive, winning 16 of his first 17 fights. He's undefeated in the UFC, and he's reaching for the stars here in this fight, but I think he gets the job done. Albazi wins by decision on significant strikes, but mainly takedowns. He'll fight through that 87% takedown defense at KaraFrance to get the victory, in my opinion, to move to 17-1, flyweight division, main event at UFC Vegas 74.